Goes without saying, Peter, that these stories are always devastating, but what compounds that disturbance is that we've sort of got used to it, and I don't want to get used to 13-year-olds being killed with a sword in broad daylight. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. As you say, it's a tragic incident and one of many that we see these days. The use of knives and bladed implements as weapons is something that has become prevalent over the last few years, decade or two. And unfortunately, it doesn't show any sign of abating. Problem with knives and bladed implements is that they are so readily available. It's almost impossible to control the availability of them. And so we must rely on the presence of police on the streets, carrying out things like stop and search, which is constantly maligned, and also by the courts putting people into prison for deterrent sentences and making that plain in their sentencing comments, which we also don't see. And so the ways of stopping the use of knives in such attacks or in any sort of attack, the two that are mainly available, both have been hobbled by the last 15 years or so of government policy.
And it seems, Peter, and we've talked about this word emboldened quite a lot in the last hour, that people who live this kind of life, whether they are teenagers who are for some reason enamoured by blades, or whether they're somebody with an addiction problem, a health problem, whatever it happens to be, this idea of these kind of crimes, once upon a time, you sense they took place at night when no one's looking. We live in a very different world now. We are covered in cameras, whether it's a phone in somebody's hand, whether it's a doorbell, whether it's on the side of a lamppost, and yet these kind of things still continue. It seems that even being seen is not a deterrent.
Certainly that is part of the story. I think we've always had assaults of all sorts, and certainly assaults where using knives. They've occurred during the day as well as at night. The feeling might have been that it was something that happened after dark in dark corners and dark alleyways, but we've always had them during the day as well. There's a certain amount of they've always taken place, but we see more of them because the media have got access to all this footage as well as the police. So the media have got pictures that they can show, and therefore they get pushed up the sort of up the schedule for the rolling news media, especially. And so we see more of them, although they've always been there to a certain extent. But definitely this boldness, this lack of a fear of the consequences is something that is concerning. If somebody is walking down the street, and we saw the pictures in this case of a guy with a 2 or 3 foot sword, just walking down the street, and we've seen them before in other incidents as well, and they're just not, the consequences are not sufficient for them to be front of mind and to make them stop and think about what they're doing. And that's something to do with sentencing, that's something to do with what is said by governments, that is something to do with the presence of police in public places, and the feeling that the police control those public places on behalf of the general public, rather than the bad guys having the run of them. And I have been concerned that the police lost the streets with the cutbacks starting in 2010, and those days will never be recovered. We've lost it for a generation or two.
It certainly does feel like that it's never been, we've never got it back, have we? Peter, thank you as ever. Peter Kirkham, former Met Police Chief Inspector, with us on